What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Connect the Dots again. I'm going to be calling you guys creators from now on. I think that is a tag that is resonating with all the people that have been listening. You know, your content creators, your business owners, your entrepreneurs, your coaches. You're all out there creating the ideal businesses and life that you want. So from now on, let's call you all creators, all right? Today, we're talking to my friend Wilson KWAN about accounting, whether or not you should be hiring an accountant, whether accountant's good for you, how it can help your business, and whether or not you actually need one, right? So let's get into this. I'm going to put Wilson on here and say, Wilson, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great, Alex. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to give you a bit of an intro to Wilson and a bit of his background on what he's done, the amazing things that he's about to do. So let's do this. Wilson KWAN, here we go. So Wilson is actually a former director at PricewaterhouseCoopers. For those of you who don't know PwC, one of the big fours, definitely check them out. But by now you probably already know. But right now he's working on this awesome project with FAN Advisors. He is the senior director over there. He holds a CPA, CA, CIRP, and LIT. And he has 10 years, actually more than a decade plus in the public practice, okay? One thing that I actually asked him before this was, what would he be doing if he wasn't an accountant? Be actually in computer programming or software engineering, working for maybe SpaceX or Tesla. And one thing that most people don't know about him is actually that he's highly ranked competitive swimmer. That's pretty cool, right? So Wilson, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but without further ado, let's get right into this and talk about what's the first question we have here? We have, how will I know if I'm ready for an accountant, or why do I need to hire one? Can we go into that?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Alex. So I just want to quickly just kind of highlight my experience and kind of what I'm doing right now before we get into the accounting side. So like Alex said, I've been at PwC and Deloitte before that, studying and doing my accounting designation and going through the usual path. So I've been on the side where I audited companies. So I go in and I make sure the books and records are clean and they're good, and you know, the company's not doing anything they're not supposed to be doing. And so I did that for 3 years, and then I moved over to the deal advisory side for another 7 years at PwC, where I worked a lot on transactions and deal flow. So really helping companies, you know, turn their business around, trying to figure out, you know, how to make the company more profitable and growing with these, you know, business leaders. So we work on everything from mid-sized companies to large-scale, multinational, multi-billion-dollar organizations. So I since left that and I joined a company called FAN Advisors, where, you know, we specialize in restructuring opportunities as well as a whole CFO side business. So in Canada, we're primarily known as a country of small and medium-sized businesses. So, you know, it's your mom and pop shops up to family-run, multi-generation business. Those are typically the size, you know, anywhere from $1 million in revenue to $50 million in revenue. So that's kind of the sweet spot in Canada. We don't have, you know, gigantic multi-billion-dollar companies like the US might, or, you know, over in Asia. So in our CFO business, we focus on helping these business owners, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's, you know, finding them, you know, the right balance as a controller, you know, with your AR and your AP, dealing with customers and suppliers. And finally, CFO services, where we're helping you negotiate with the banks, we're helping you negotiate with, you know, stakeholders, building financial models and all that good stuff. So that's a quick primer to what we're going to be talking about, you know, when it's time to hire an accountant. As a small business owner, you know, maybe you just started your business, maybe you're trying to figure things out, you have a product, you know, you're watching YouTube, you're learning about marketing, how to put things together, putting your website together. So then now we're really starting to talk about, when are you ready to hire an accountant? And I would say the first sign is, you know, when you're ready to delegate. And what I mean by that is, as a business owner, you want control of everything. So you want to control sales, you want to, control the bank account, you want to control every part of it because it's your baby, right? And you want to nurture it and grow it. So it's very hard for you to give away such a big piece, which is the financial aspect of it. But like most business owners will tell you, especially, fresh entrepreneurs, the burnout is real. Overworking from trying to do everything and all the tasks is something that you shouldn't be spending your time on. An accountant is a financial expert, especially a designated accountant like a CPA. We've gone through training, many years of it, so we understand, all the intricacies of, financial statements. So, at some point you have to decide, if doing your taxes is going to take you 10 hours and, how much is your time worth? $100 an hour, that's about $1,000. So is it better to just hand that off your financials to an accountant and let them deal with what they do best while you can focus on what you do best, which is growing your newly started business? So that's the first question.
Yeah, love it. Wow. So what I hear in that is really just saving a person a whole bunch of time, even a whole bunch of money, right? Because you are the professionals, we can try and figure out ourselves, and especially for people who are bootstrapped. They're starting their businesses, starting to make that money, starting to generate extra income, and then they get to the point where they're saying, okay, maybe my time is better spent on something else, building the business rather than working with the tiny nitty gritty financials, right? Which more than likely the professionals will know how to do better and really get things in order, right? So which brings me to my next question is, what are some common challenges that you have helped business owners turn around? I mean, hiring an accountant, obviously it costs some money. There are common trends in terms of the challenges or problems that business owners have faced. So I'm hoping you can talk a bit about that.
So I think right now is actually an interesting time. So I'm in corporate restructuring, as I said before, in addition to me being a CPA. And the pandemic has created significant challenges for us all around the world. Everyone's feeling it. And so long right now, as we have government subsidies, that's great to, just keep the business alive, borrowing to pay, employees and purchase goods and continue operating during this time. But the most common challenge that I found is not understanding where your cash position is. So even though you might be booking all your expenses and you might be booking, your revenues, and you kind of know, on a month end where your financials are, it's not a really good indicator of where your actual cash position is. And what I mean by that is, you probably know when, you make a sale, okay, I expect cash to come in a month from now, but as you're building up, you're probably spending money on, all these different subscription services that you have. So every month you have probably a fixed amount of cash flow that goes out, or maybe you have to buy inventory, so you have to pay for that up front. But because of the pandemic and everything going on, you don't know, when that inventory is going to get sold. You don't know if it's going to, it's not the same cadence as it was before. So managing cash flows and managing, your suppliers and your cash outflows is absolutely critical because, at the end of the day, cash is king. And that's something that's not really taught, in accounting school or anything like that, because in accounting, it's all historical. You're booking your expenses as they come, so you get a historical view. So one of the things what we try to do with helping businesses is actually prepare a cash flow that actually shows the inflows and outflows of when you expect those items to happen. So, if you have customers paying you net 30, I would conservatively have the inflows come in at the very end. So 30 days, you'll have your inflows, but then for your outflows, I would assume, you pay it on time rather than delaying it 2, 3, 4 months if you can. This way you understand what your actual cash crunch is, like what is the worst case scenario. And then from there, we can work on strategies to get you out of that situation, whether it's raising more funds through equity, or, speaking with a bank and trying to figure out how to utilize, lines of credit and whatnot just to survive, during this time.
Nice. No, I love that. And really getting a grip of everything is so important, which actually is a great segue into our next question here. And actually, for those of you who are actually tuned in, we have a few viewers. If you have any questions, I would urge you to ask them in the chat box. I will ask Wilson the questions as they come in, but please feel free. We'd love to get your questions, okay? Next up we have is, you touched on this quite a bit, but I want to know from your perspective, especially with all your decades or your decade plus of experience in the accounting, sector, why is proper accounting so important? I mean, we hear about it, getting a grasp of our financials are important, but really in your perspective, why is it so important?
I think it's just the easiest answer is to know where you're at, right? At any, even you personally, if you're running up your credit cards, or if your rent is coming due or payments are coming due, you want to know, do you have enough cash to pay for it, right? Like if I'm making salary and I'm making it biweekly, and I have house payments, car payments, this payments, you want to know when that's going to happen. And it's the same in business, right? Just because you started a business and you're incurring all these, setup costs, and, you're buying equipment like a camera, or like, marketing services, signing up to PayPal, signing up to Shopify, all of that kind of stuff. And you might be thinking, well, I'm just throwing it on my personal card right now. Let's see if this works. But at the end of the day, those are all business expenses, and you want to be able to track all of that. And nowadays, 10 years ago when I started my accounting career, there wasn't all these amazing tools that we have now. You could have QuickBooks, small essential, small business, is virtually free. Companies like Wave Apps or Xero or any of these amazing cloud-based applications, they're virtually free for small businesses. And, whether you have accounting friends that could help you set it up, or you want to watch a couple YouTube videos to set it up, it's really not hard to set up in the beginning. And when you don't have a lot of expenses, it's easy to try out, okay, I'll take this one invoice that I paid for something, let's book that entry and see what it looks like. And then you can actually see, okay, in January, I have a net outflow of $150. It's for that piece of equipment that I bought. Cool. Now I'm tracking it. So it's about getting in the habit in the very beginning to really keep track of your finances. And then down the road, you can then start looking at what I would call like key performance indicators or key business metrics. So then once you get going and you're really growing your business, I want to know what my sales growth is. Am I trending month over month? Am I growing 5%? Am I growing 10%? What are my costs that's been increasing? Maybe I hired a few more people, so payroll's increasing, or, you're using platforms that charge on a per transaction basis. So as you're onboarding more, customers, you're also paying a lot more to some of these services. I want to know that. What about cost of acquisition? So that's another key metric as well. And so if you have an accountant and if you have cloud-based accounting software, a lot of these, questions that you might have is as easy as pushing a button now to figure out in real time, what is my sales growth or what is my revenue per customer? And those are key things to let you know and have a pulse on your business.
Nice. I love it. And I haven't prepared this question yet, but I would love to know your input on the distinction between a product-based service and an actual service-based service, right? Someone selling their services versus someone selling a product. Have you seen a difference between the two and how they set up their accounting systems, or are they very similar?
I would say they're very, very similar. They're similar and they're not. So, similar in the sense that, the revenue stream is, accounting is not very difficult, right? So the revenue stream is for a subscription service is simply at the end of the month, you book that revenue because, those customers likely pay on a monthly basis, and every month recurs, so it's a one line item. Whereas a goods and product service, that one's a little more complicated because it's more complicated on the expense and account and the asset side, because you have to purchase inventory first. So when you purchase inventory, and it depends if you're actually building it into something, like maybe you run an Etsy store and you're crafting something, so you have to buy all the raw materials first. So that'd be booked as raw material, and then a work in progress, and then the finished goods. So that sits on the asset side, and then finally, when you sell it for let's say a 50% margin, so twice as much as it costs, then you'll have the revenue line item saying, I sold this good for $100, and then I let go of release the inventory for $50, and there's my profit. So I mean, it's a bit more complicated when there is goods and services, goods and products that you're selling, because of the whole inventory tracking matter. But like I said before, depends on how big your business is. A lot of these more complicated accounting software will have the capabilities to actually track and monitor that. And that's actually very important, because cost of goods sold is a metric to determine what your gross margin is. So you may be selling all of your product at a fixed selling price of $100, but your raw materials as they come in, China right now has a current lockdown in place, so you don't know how long that's going to take. Maybe you have to source your raw materials from another country that might be more expensive. So then your cost of goods sold starts to increase, because you're paying more money for the same raw materials. So that's going to affect your profit and your bottom line. Again, going back to the point of, if you have a good accountant and a good accounting software or a system, you can figure out on a monthly basis in real time what is my gross margin and my profit is, so I can fix it as it happens.
Nice. Love it. Love it. And recently I've been speaking to a lot of people, and they talk to me about how to set their prices, right? How do I know if I'm going to set the price so I actually make a profit, or am I going to be at a loss? And a lot of them, everything we're talking about today really ties into that, right? Getting a snapshot of your costs and how much actual revenue you're going to make after you start charging people. Because I've known people to charge, people selling products, and then they end up saying, oh crap, where's all my money? I was selling these things that are selling like hotcakes, but I have no positive. So really, guys, getting a snapshot of where you are, and I love how Wilson's covering all this. Knowing where you are now, so you can charge the right prices, so you can actually have a business just at a base level, right? Which brings me to my next question here: is what are some best money practices for business owners? I mean, by that, I would love to expand on it. I mean, some people will start businesses just out of passion, right? Some people want to sell cakes. Some people want to start a coaching business, for example. But maybe there are some practices that you know of that would serve them best, starting from the beginning. So maybe putting 20% aside into a savings account, or you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah. So, if you're, and I've often thought about, starting my own business as well. If only I could figure out, what I want to do. It's never an easy thing. So I completely appreciate that question. So, there's lots of people out there talking about personal finance, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But, saving that nest egg, to set aside specifically for your business is critically important, because like anyone knows, you have no idea what's going to happen when you launch your business, right? And we are fortunate right now to be in a time of the digital age where, signing up for YouTube or signing up for Shopify, it's very low cost to get in. I even budget, it probably costs you, $1,000 to set up everything, right? From accounting software to Shopify to, maybe hiring someone to design your logos, or, whatever the case may be. And, let's say if you're doing the drop shipping business, it's more about investing your own personal time to actually reach out to suppliers and deal with them and try to figure out what you're going to sell, right? So if you're going down that route, in my world, it's more consulting and it's more, finding clients and offering accounting services. So at the end of the day, I'm investing time into, building my network, doing business development. So at the end of the day, do I have enough saved up personally to, let's say if I didn't have a job and I'm not working for a firm and I was doing this myself, can I sustain, how long, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? And you'll hear this a lot in high tech or technology companies. It's called your burn rate. And I think that's something going back to the whole cash flow of, how much money am I going to spend in the next X months until I reach profitability? And profitability is different for everyone depending on what your service is. If you're like Alex here and you're running a coaching service, well, your overhead and your, camera equipment and subscription services are pretty low. So, maybe it's only a certain number of clients to break even. And then after that, it's, you're then starting to build your business. Whereas when you're selling goods and services, if you have to buy the goods up front first, say you had to spend 20 grand to buy a bunch of goods and then you're selling it off in pieces. But remember, you're not getting, the full profit. So you're getting the gross margin on that. That is selling price less the cost, all in cost of that product. So then you take that and you're like, okay, is this little amount of profit? How much do I actually need to sell until I finally break even? And then I'm actually making money as a business. Is it going to take 6 months? Okay, if it takes 6 months, do I need to hire people? How much money am I spending on all these subscription services? And then work backwards and then figure out, okay, well, I actually need 50 grand to start my business because I'm going to be losing money for the first 6 months until I reach that equilibrium point where I'm actually making money. And then it's starting to flow back into me. So
Awesome.
Working backwards.
Yes, love it. Working backwards and knowing where you're going, getting a clear picture of what that actually looks like, of where you are now, where you want to be, what you actually need to get that set up. And, it sounds, there's so many similarities to that in terms of planning your finances and really planning your life, right? As a life coach, it's kind of funny. I work with people and create their visions. A lot of people, many people don't know where they want to be and don't have a clear vision of that. Not only that, but they don't even know where they are now. So that's just an aside note. We have a question here from one of the viewers, and I'm going to show it to you. Hopefully it comes up on your screen here. What are the first biggest problems the business starters have faced for accounting staff, and how can they handle with them? However you interpret that. You get the question?
Okay, what are the first biggest problems business starters have faced for accounting staff? So, some clarity would be good. So, I'm assuming you are the entrepreneur and business owner, so you're trying to hire accounting staff and you're trying to work with them. And honestly, nowadays, because accounting is so commoditized, you could search a bookkeeping service and there's like 100 bookkeepers out there. It is very hard to figure out, which one's good for you, which one's right. At the end of the day, it's the same as any business, right? Like if you have lawyer friends, if you have, if you go for physio or chiro or anything like that, you're always going to be asking for recommendations. So I would always seek a referral first. And most of the time, if they're, even accountants like me who are working for big firms and, I would acknowledge that I'm probably too costly to work with a brand new startup. I would have recommendations for, bookkeeping shops that, either I've dealt with or my friends have dealt with who are reputable and who understand what you do. The second thing I would look at is, and I've actually do that, like I said, my firm does bookkeeping as well for, medium-sized Canadian companies. And as we were looking at our competitors as well, everyone has a different specialty. I found a bookkeeping firm that works with dental offices. I found a bookkeeping firm that, works with startup and high growth companies. I looked at one that looked at blockchain and crypto companies. So, look for, if you're in the, whatever your business is, the first thing you should do when you're looking for an accounting or a bookkeeping firm is to find one that specializes in what you do. So, I mean, that's a given no-brainer. But, there's a lot of people out there just selling generic, commodity, accounting as a commodity. What I would suggest is focusing on finding one that specializes in your area, because they will know the nuances of your business, and they will know certain tax implications or certain tax deductions that's applicable for your line of business. For instance, I've been, my firm, Fan Advisors, we're on Le Chateau, and that's public. And in the retail space, I've only done a few retail in my career, and the whole retail space works on every quarter. It's on a weekly basis, because they need to know how much goods and services are sold on a weekly basis, and their quarters are divided up by 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So, month 1 is 4 weeks, and then month 2 is 4 weeks, and month 3 is 5 weeks. And so that's something unique to retail industries, because they care about same store sales and same week sales compared to the week in the prior year, because you want to know to the granular detail how your business is performing. So something like that is unique to that industry. So when you're trying to figure out, whatever your business is in, find the bookkeeper or the accountant that specializes in that field. And nowadays with LinkedIn and with, Google, it's really not hard to find the right person, right?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. And this whole concept of service is something that I always bring up with the people that I talk to. Service, you can serve a person. Wilson himself is an accountant. He is specialized in a certain field, but service could also mean hooking you up with the right people, right? You build credibility, you start to build your portfolio, and people will, seek you out for the fact that you can help them, right? So for your viewers, especially when you're trying to build your businesses, know that service doesn't always end with you. You can always, refer people. And I love that. And while we're on that topic, I mean, if you're looking for the right accountant, maybe Wilson's a guy to talk to. Maybe he's your first stop. Maybe he knows a few people who specialize in that field that you want to dwell in, right? So that said, make sure I will put the details for Wilson's contact in the description below later on. But going on, I know this was actually my next question. How will you know if an accountant is right for you? And I know you touched on that quite a bit. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Maybe it's personality. Yeah, go ahead.
So, at the end of the day, at some point when you grow big enough, you don't want to do accounting. And, I'm pretty sure there's a reason why, when you're in college or university, you didn't take accounting, because it's probably boring, right? And the last thing you want to do as an entrepreneur, growing your amazing business, doing whatever you're doing, the last thing you want to do is looking at financial statements and booking entries and, okay, I made this one sale for $100. Okay, debit, cash, credit, revenue. Like, nobody wants to be doing that, right? And that's why just leave it to the accountant, deal with it, and then keep your time away so that you can grow your business. Now, I'm going to talk about, when to engage an accountant, and, maybe you are proficient. Maybe you care enough at the beginning to do your own books yourself, because like I said, with all these fancy softwares out there, and most of it is free, you probably could do it yourself watching a couple of YouTube videos. It's honestly not hard. But where an accountant really comes into play is adding that credibility and reliability to your financial numbers. So there are different stages in your business life cycle where I think it's important. And a few of them could be, one, helping you write your business plan. So, maybe you're pitching your business to friends, colleagues, investors, whoever it may be, and you want to put some financial forecasts in there, because how are you going to convince someone to invest in your business if you don't have sales numbers, a plan? What is it going to look like 3 years or 5 years down the line, right? And a lot of investors need that. If you ever watch Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, that's the first thing they ask. What are the sales, and what do you plan to do? How much equity are you going to offer? So that's also another question. So how much do you think you're worth? And let's work backwards to figure out how much equity or how much shares that you want to offer from your company. The other things that, accountants are good for as well is talking about your corporate structure. Do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to be a partnership? Do you want to incorporate? We can walk through, the pros and cons of that, insofar as getting up to the legalities of it, and we can work with your corporate counsel to help structure that as well. Accountants understand the finances, so we can spot issues and trends early on so that you can remedy and fix that. We help file taxes and deal with the government when or in Canada it's called CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. When they come and audit you, we can help with the books and records and explain to the government why, things are the way they are. As well as applying for business loans. Maybe you're applying to the bank and, having a CPA present the numbers adds that level of credibility. So there's all these different, aspects that I think having an accountant is very useful, especially if you're starting, not starting a business, but, a little bit further down the line where you're now growing the business and you're adding people on. Don't overlook, the back office and keeping your books and records clean, because that will save your life down the road. How many times have you built something and then, down the road it's grown to something amazing and you're like, I wish if I had just built this like module in early on, or if I had just spent a bit more time in the planning phase and implemented this, then, my life would have been easier. Same thing with starting a business. Engage an accountant early, or at least start the accounting software and booking your expenses early and get in the habit of that. That will pay dividends and save you so much time, and not to mention money down the road.
Love it. Love it. So speaking of money, that comes to my next question here, Wilson, is what kind of fees can I expect or business owners expect when hiring an accountant?
So surprisingly, it's quite affordable now because, like I said before, it is very commoditized, the accounting world, especially with all these new online software. Now, let's say you have the online software, which is probably free or very inexpensive, like $10 a month. And it depends how big your business is and how fast you're growing it. And like we talked about before, is it a product and good services, or is it a service or subscription-based service? If it's subscription-based, at the end of the day, you have to think about, why are you preparing financial statements? Who is the user? Most of the time, it's your tax authority, it's your CRA, it's your IRS, it's, whatever your tax jurisdiction is. At the end of the year, you need to report your income, and then you need to pay your taxes on that. So I would say at a bare minimum, you don't need an accountant full time. Let's just get that out of the way. You don't need an accountant full time. You don't need them on retainer, and you likely only need them at the end of the year. If you're starting your business, because you're filing taxes. Now, like I said before, are you keeping track of your expenses on a monthly basis? If the answer is yes, and your record keeping is good, then you'll probably only spend, your accountant probably only needs to spend, a few hours, 5 or 10 hours of their time putting together your books and records, filing your taxes. Could cost anywhere between, $500 to $2,000, depending on how big your business is. But that's kind of the average, what I've seen for small and medium-sized businesses for a tax return and that year-end preparation. But like I said, if you didn't keep track of all your expenses during the year, and what we call shoebox accounting, that is where you take all your receipts, you throw it in a shoebox, you hand it over to the accountant, and now the accountant has to go through and book all the entries by hand into the accounting software. Then we're talking about, 20 to 40 hours worth of time, right? So it depends how you want to go about it. Now, let's say, you're growing and you want an accountant on a monthly basis, a lot of these companies that offer bookkeeping services, typically 75 bucks an hour, and you probably only need them for 2 to 3 hours a month, and they normally tier the pricing. So it's like if you have 70 transactions a month, then it's 250 bucks, 150 transactions, 300, 350, up to 500. I've seen as high as 750 a month, but typically, under 1,000 Canadian per month for a bookkeeper. And a bookkeeper typically is not a CPA. It's, typically someone who's been in an accounting kind of role, like a junior accountant, for a long period of time, and they're good at booking these entries. And so that helps keep your costs low, because you don't want the CPA booking these entries and charging you out at 150 or 200 bucks an hour, right? You want that CPA on a as needed basis to explain the high level stuff to you. Where's your revenue trending? Where's your cost going? To give you that insight. That's the value that the accountant is supposed to bring. Or at year end, to file your taxes and say, hey, I think expenses should be dealt with in a certain way, or your tax refund could be like this, and work with you to strategically figure out what's optimized for your business. So that's what the CPA should be doing, whereas the bookkeeper at a cheaper rate should be the one actually manually inputting all of your costs.
Nice. Thank you for that clarification. And for those of you who are watching, I hope you have a better understanding of whether or not you actually need an accountant or a bookkeeper or whatever it is you need. If you have any questions, again, find this man here, Wilson. He knows his stuff. So if you guys got some value out of this episode, I would invite you to, if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, go ahead. There's going to be more episodes like this. And if you liked what you saw, obviously, hit that like button. If you didn't like it, hit that like button twice. See what that does for you. And then we're going to go to the next section of this episode, which I love doing with my guests, is rapid fire. Now, rapid fire, as you guys all know, we're going to ask 10 questions, random questions. Wilson's going to let us get to know him a little bit better on a personal level, and we'll see how it goes. Are you ready, Wilson?
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. So first question, are you a morning person or a night person?
Night person, definitely. I have troubles waking up in the morning. Nice.
Awesome. What's your favorite hobby?
So unfortunately with the pandemic, I had a big passion in cars, automotive. But these days you're stuck at home and doing things digital. So my biggest hobby right now is just learning new skills. So one of them being Python programming. So I'm taking lessons on that, and so it's been very, very cool.
Nice, love it. What is one of your weirdest quirks?
That's a good one. I can't think of one that come to mind right now.
That's okay. Describe yourself in 3 words.
I would say I'm pretty ambitious, and I'm always striving for, to better myself. I'm highly driven and, very curious, especially trying to, just seeing what's going on with the world, right? Especially with all the great advancements with, SpaceX and launching astronauts in space, so I would say curious, ambitious, and driven.
Nice, love it. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Check my stock portfolio.
Okay.
I swear, I roll over, and first thing I do is open that stock portfolio to see where markets are at.
Okay, this is a fun one. When I dance, I look like a
poorly coordinated person. I want to say that's the most politically correct way I could say it.
Love it.
Terrible coordination.
It's okay. You're not the only one. I know tons of people who are like that. What's your favorite TV channel, or actually TV show, I would say?
I've been watching a lot of Netflix lately. Actually, ever since I moved out, I haven't had cable since I lived with parents. But it's a lot of space shows. So like Lost in Space. There's one called Away right now, Away, and just a lot of those thought-provoking shows, as well as like sci-fi and fantasy. Like I love that, like The Witcher, and all these high 4K, super nice quality like Netflix series. It's just amazing.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. What's the nicest thing someone has ever told you?
You know what? Recently, so when I left the firm at PwC, one of the partners emailed me and he said, it's such a shame that you're leaving, and um, he was like, I really thought that one day I would see you as, one of my partners. So I thought that was a vote of encouragement, and especially in this big corporate world, and you're all climbing, and you're always wondering, have I made it? Am I there yet? And to just hear things like that is very reaffirming.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. And finally, last question. What is the store that you shop at the most?
So again, right now we're at home, so it's been well. First, Amazon probably doesn't count as a store, but the other one would be Newegg for computer equipment just computer parts. And
Yeah.
so I love seeing all the new stuff that comes out, new processor, new video cards, and all that good stuff. So that's kind of my vice, and that's what I've been wasting my money on.
No, all right. I'm going to throw this in there. If you met Elon Musk tomorrow, what would you ask him?
Can I work? Can I work at Tesla? Or can I work at SpaceX? Actually,
Nice.
that would be
Awesome.
amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Wilson. This was awesome having you on the show. You brought so much value to our audience. And guys, if you haven't already, go ahead, go to the YouTube channel, check out the description. I will put his contact info, links, all the things you need to know about Wilson. Reach out to him because he's the man. He knows exactly where to go with your accounting. And I just want to say thanks again.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on the show, Alex, and I wish you the best.
Awesome. Take care.